The following program is sponsored by Fullerton Financial Planning.
Welcome to the Fullerton Financial Show with the founders of Fullerton Financial Planning, Stephanie and Steve Fullerton, a program designed to empower you to live financially confident in retirement. From income planning and wealth management to healthcare, defending against taxes, and leaving a legacy. Stephanie and Steve share the strategies and insights you need to help achieve retirement success. This is the Fullerton Financial Show.
On average, we go through a recession every 6 to 7 years here in the United States. So chances are you'll experience a recession or two in retirement. One of the big questions we want to help you address today, do you think your finances can handle a recession? Welcome to the Fullerton Financial Show. I'm Tara Hitchcock, joined by Steve and Stephanie Fullerton, the founders of Fullerton Financial Planning. Great to be back with you both.
Well, it's good to be here. Thanks, Tara.
Thank you. Talk about, though, a scary word, recession, especially for those in retirement. So what things can we do to help alleviate the fears associated with that word, recession?
Yeah, we know we've said it before on the show. We can't prevent bad things from happening, especially when it comes to our stock market, global economy. But what can help is a plan. And so there are things that we can help people begin to do to navigate through the unexpected times. Create a plan. Make sure you got an emergency fund. Be diversified in your investments. Think about those long-term savings. If you go back to 2000, people that retired in 2000 thought they were retiring in a great season.
Right.
We came out of the 90s, the markets were booming. Remember that the big saying on the stock market was, hey, if you had a monkey blindfolded, let it throw a dart wherever it landed, you can make money. And that didn't happen. In those 10 years, we saw two major adjustments.
Right. And when we talk about diversified investments, it also means diversified strategies. Mm-hmm. Because if you're solely in the market, when the market corrects hard, and it will in a recession, and time is a component of that as well, but if you're diversified in your investment strategies, maybe it's not going to hit quite so hard as well. So that's really important.
Well, talk about job security. Sometimes in a recession, that's the number one thing people are concerned about. And then all of a sudden, you may find yourself in a forced early retirement scenario, which happened during COVID as well for a lot of people.
Yeah, we saw it. The first thing that we're going to just encourage people to do, first of all, don't panic. Let's sit down. Let's take an inventory. Let's take a look at the assets that you have. What are the things that you're going to have to maybe, the gap that you might have between 60 and 65? How are you going to pay for health care? Let's look at those HSA accounts, emergency funds. It was very normal for us during 2020 to see people come in and they were being forced into early retirement, and they were panicking, and let's evaluate. Should we go back to part-time employment? Those are the things. You have to take an inventory. Wouldn't you agree?
I would. My dad taught me that work is good. And when we had several of our clients, they didn't want to retire. They were forced into retirement.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And they're scared and they're panicked, and they would come in and we would meet. And so we would go over all these things, their risk and their assets. And then we would have a conversation. Sometimes it was a difficult conversation because we would recommend that they get a job. It wasn't a career, but it was a job to help out in the transition of recession, yuck, into something when things build up. And if we look historically, after a recession, it takes a period of time and things will bounce back. It's just that gap that we really have to get them through and help them concentrate, not just on seeing the immediate right now, but a long-term, hey, if we stick with it, if this is long-term, we've got different strategies with different purposes, they're going to be okay.
How many people during that time did you see have to dip into their retirement savings because they had to pivot? So they're taking a chance, but they're counting on the fact that their skills and their intelligence will get them through it, and their patience. How many people did you all deal with that actually had to dip into their savings to pivot and kind of not start from scratch, but build it back up?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I'm going to say, there was a good number. Not all of them,
Mm-hmm.
and everybody's different.
Right.
But I'm thinking of one client in particular. I mean, 60 years old, wasn't planning on being laid off, had assets and a plan, and we say it all the time, we don't want the bad stuff to happen, but when it does, if we have a plan, we've already kind of visited it from a conceptual level, so we can help them get back to a place of thriving and not just surviving.
And a lot of times people think, well, they have to wait to come see us until they're going to retire.
Right.
Or, until a life circumstance happens. It's never too late. It's never too early. We don't want people to be reactive to situations. We want them to be proactive. And so we found for those clients that we had already been sitting down with and been working out a plan, that conversation was much more calming to them than those ones that were picking up the phone and saying,
Sure.
we just saw your show,
Right.
and we've got to get in because we just realized our job is being eliminated. We don't know what to do. And those decisions become more of an emotional decision than a decision based on the facts. And so come in. Don't wait
Right.
till another pandemic, or don't wait until your 401k goes in and have to figure out, what do I have to do? I want to retire. Come in and let's start putting a plan together, because when those things happen, then you don't find yourself wanting to jump off a cliff because you don't know what to do.
Well, I know your clients, some of them have already gotten the message because they've asked you to talk to their kids already
Yes,
about it.
yes.
They're teenagers already about this subject. Steve and Stephanie, thank you so much. So much insight and so much to cover. In fact, coming up on the Fullerton Financial Show, Stephanie and I are going to talk about long-term care in retirement and why that poses a unique challenge to women. Plus, Steve explains the double whammy that can cause you to drain your retirement savings just too quickly. The Fullerton Financial Show continues right after this.
When it comes to taxes, you want to pay more or less? I'll bet you're like me, you'd rather pay less in taxes. How can you do that? When you use certain strategies, you can take more control over your taxes. When you pay taxes on the contributions of your retirement account, that's like taxing the seed. But if you wait and pay taxes when you're taking it out, it's like paying on the harvest. Contact our team today to talk about strategies that can help you pay taxes on the seed, not the harvest. We'll see you soon.
Welcome back to the show. It is time for Women's Wealth. This is the part of the show where Stephanie and I have the chance to talk about some of the challenges to retirement that specifically apply to women. And today, the topic is long-term care. It's a concern, obviously, for everybody. But for women specifically, why do you think that is?
Well, I mean, you've said it. It's not just for women, but it does affect women more. I want to start with this, Tara. 70% of all people in nursing home are women. I mean, that's a big number. There's a statistic out that says 80% of women die single, widowed, or never married, and 80% of men die with a companion. So women tend to need health care more, and long-term care insurance or long-term care facilities seem to be more often. Women are needed it more than men. So very important topic.
Well, and it's a tough one sometimes to talk about. You all have preached having the conversation sooner rather than later, just so that that person can be involved in the process, correct?
Yeah, it's interesting because typically we do kind of get in a habit of planning that the woman is going to outlast the man, and you do all the planning wrapped around the wife surviving.
Right.
I do specifically remember one time I did this. So we did all the planning around the lady. She's healthy and everything was great. And it ended up being her that passed away first. So it's not an absolute for sure. So when building out a plan, you want to plan for either or, but typically you're going to look at that, woman, the wife being the one that's going to survive. And so it is crazy. You walk into a retirement community, like it's majority women. We talked about my mother-in-law just moving in recently to a retirement community. And we walked in and it was, happened to be at happy hour. We walked in and it's like 10 women, 2 men.
Well, and you happen to know a lot of them. In fact, the folks at the retirement home are wondering who is this woman, because everyone seems to know her. You were practically a rock star there, but a lot of your clients were
Yes,
there.
it was kind of funny because we started walking through, we were taking a tour, and then I see one client, and they're like, Stephanie, and I'm like, hi. And by the time we sat down with the sweet lady that was taking us around the community, she goes, who are you? I said, I'm a retirement planner, and you've got a lot of my clients. So it was a great conversation, but it really led into why my mom was there. You know, my mother-in-law, she was there because we wanted to make sure that we were being proactive and not reactive. We had just had the conversation with her earlier that year in the summer, and we said to her, like, Mimi, like, you know, have you thought about what the next 10 years looks like? What are your what do you want to happen? You know, do you want us to, you know, prepare a place in our home that you would be able to move into? And let's face it, you know, her moving into our home maybe would have been a little bit more difficult because she's not bringing her things. It's not her dishes. It's the other woman.
Right.
Not that we couldn't have made it work, but it's hard. So long-term care and retirement communities are a very important conversation. Now, what's interesting is my mom, same conversation. My mom was at the table, and Tara, my mother-in-law, leaned into the conversation, and my mother
Did the opposite.
What
do you do in that scenario?
Just love her.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the reality is, you know, we're there to help her, but I also know this because I've helped a lot of people walk through this season in life, and I've seen the good, and I've seen the bad.
Right.
And I've seen the healthy, and I've not seen the healthy. And so this is something that is super important that as a family you talk about.
So what are some of the questions when you're in that scenario and you've got somebody that you're now starting to think about in those terms? What are some of the questions that you need to ask?
Oh, I think it's super important to understand the finances. Because when we sat down at this retirement community, what's one of the first questions that they're going to ask? They asked my mother, okay, we want you to give us a financial inventory. Because they're making sure too, as you come into our community, can you afford it?
Right.
So there's different levels of care. What does long-term care look like? Do you have enough assets to take care of that? You know, a higher percentage of women find themselves single, widowed, or divorced versus a higher percent of men when they pass away are married. So it's very interesting when you lean into that study.
This almost sounds overwhelming.
It
If
is
you're watching and you're
overwhelming.
already, you've been planning ahead and you've been thinking about everything except maybe this.
Yeah.
Now you've got to add this to the plate.
Yes. And so it's something that, because nobody ever comes in thinking, I want this, I'm going to be there. In fact, they think that it'll never happen to them. In reality, remember, we started 70% of people that are in nursing care, nursing homes are women.
It's important that we empower ourselves and
Absolutely.
ask these questions early. Thank you so much, Stephanie. Yeah. Coming up next on the Fullerton Factor, how can a major market drop? What can that do to your retirement? It depends on a number of things, obviously, including the timing. That's next in the Fullerton Factor. And still to come, Stephanie and Steve answer some of your most pressing retirement questions. You're watching the Fullerton Financial Show.
When you address your financial concerns, it can lead to greater confidence about your future.
At Fullerton Financial Planning, our workshops focus on common issues that people preparing for and in retirement face.
Issues like income needs, medical expenses, and legacy planning. Many of the treasured relationships that we've built started with a visit to one of our workshops.
Call or visit fullertonfp.com for a complete list of upcoming events and to register.
Welcome back. A lot of people paying attention to the stock market. So in today's The Fullerton Factor, Stephanie illustrates how the timing of a market drop can have a big impact on your bottom line. Stephanie?
Thanks, Tara. Today's Fullerton Factor centers around what we call the sequence of return risk. To help show you what we mean by that, I want to tell you a story about two brothers. Let's just say these two brothers, their name is Steve and Bill. Both retire at under very similar circumstances. They both have each $500,000 in their, say, 401ks, their IRA accounts. So to cover their RMDs, that's their required minimum distributions and other expenses, they're going to need to pull $30,000 out of their IRA each year. The only difference between the two is that Steve is going to retire in 2010, while Bill, his brother, will retire in the year 2000. So let's see how they both ended up in retirement. So let's start with Steve. As you can see from this chart, after starting out with $500,000 and taking out that $30,000 per year, he found himself in 10 years with almost $900,000 in his IRA. Not bad. But now, let's check on Bill. See, he retired in the year 2000 with the same amount of money, taking out the same amount of withdrawals as Steve did. How do you think Bill ended up? Unfortunately, 10 years later, he found himself with less than $100,000 left in his retirement because of risk. So how did this happen? It all comes down to what the market did. See, when Steve retired, he retired in a strong market, and his gains were able to overcome the $30,000 a year withdrawals that he was making, compounding and growing throughout the decade. However, when Bill retired in not a great market, just one down year from the market, but 3 down years in a row. And here's the interesting thing to note, is that for the next several years of Bill's retirement, the market actually performed pretty well. But unfortunately, after those first 3 years, Bill's IRA was never able to catch up. And this is sequence of returns risk. The state of the market you retire in can have a big impact on your retirement. And obviously, we can't control what the market will do. The stock market will always carry risk. However, what we can control is how much of your retirement savings are exposed to the market at any given time. See, a comprehensive retirement income strategy accounts for what could happen in a bear market, ensuring that you aren't exposed to more risk than you're comfortable with. Our team works with families every day. We assess their risk levels. We don't want anyone to be in a situation that Bill found himself in, where running out of money could be a real possibility. If you're not working with a team that understands the importance of sequence of return risk, then it could be a time for a second look at your plan. Our team would be thrilled to meet with you and go over your retirement income strategy. It never hurts to look, and we'll provide this review with no obligation to you. That's what we have for this week's Fullerton Factor. Now back to you, Tara.
All right, thanks, Stephanie. By the way, if you have a question about retirement, don't go anywhere because Steve and Stephanie can help with the answers. That's coming up in our Q&A segment as the Fullerton Financial Show continues right after this.
Don't you love a good deal? If you're like me, you love finding things on sale. I want to tell you about a special sale you don't want to miss. Believe it or not, taxes are on sale. They're lower than they've been in decades, but just like back to school sale or Black Friday special, lower taxes are only here until 2026. Contact my team now to learn ways to take advantage of this tax sale while there's still time.
You may have a question about retirement. This then is the segment for you. It's our Q&A segment when Steve and Stephanie get ready to answer some of your questions, and we've got some great ones. Are you ready?
Yeah.
We're going to start with Dan in Phoenix. I plan to retire in about 3 years. I have a good amount in a target date fund in my 401k. Do I just let it ride there until I'm ready to retire, or do you think I should start making some adjustments to that now?
Well, what we would say is if you've got a 401k and you're over 59 and a half, you might want to consider taking control of it yourself. Target funds are good, air quotes around that, because they're more aggressive. Let's say it was a 2040 retirement. It's more aggressive and it gets closer to the 2040 retirement data gets more conservative and things like that. And it's required to adjust as the plan says it is required to adjust. But it might not be the right thing to do. But it has to do it because that's the rules of that plan. Mm-hmm. If you can take your 401k and put it into something, then you're able to get real investment advice and not just set it kind of an autopilot. Again, the autopilot might be right, but it might not be right as well. So a good place to start is a target fund, but I would say when you're 59 and a half and you can actually get control of that, it would certainly be worth talking with a financial advisor about that.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, I think what a good point to make on that is take a look at when you're going to retire and pick that target fund that reflects that until you get to 59 and a half. At 59 and a half, it might make sense to sit down with investor planners that can sit down and take a look at what you're going to need to live on and what you want to grow to hedge inflation. So it's a good rule to take a look at it.
Well, it sounds like it's somewhat of a good problem to have. He's already got it invested. Now he's just curious, can I tweak it? Can I make some adjustments? Yep. So best of luck. Our next question, I have to say, is a little bit of a favorite because I feel like there might be more than just money at play here. So this is Kate and Cortabella. We have several different investment accounts, and my husband is afraid of neglecting any of them. He spends a lot of time managing these accounts and rebalancing. Is this necessary? I think it might be time to get a professional set of eyes on what he's doing. I feel like Kate isn't 100% confident in her husband. Am I wrong?
That, or she doesn't like how much time he spends in front of the computer.
Right.
We do hear this all the time. So Kate, I get it. I understand because they'll come in and sit down with us and they will say, my husband spends night and day looking at the computer. And depending on where the markets are, depends on where his emotions are. So she might just be saying, I want my husband. Aww. He's retired, or maybe they're not retired. Who knows? But you want to answer that.
Well, I will just say I picked out a couple things in her question is several different retirement accounts. I also hear in the question that maybe she's not 100% comfortable. I don't know if she's aware of what's going on, and that's their relationship. I don't mean to get into the middle of that.
Right.
But a lot of what we do oftentimes is help consolidate. Adjusting it often, that's something that kind of rings a bell inside of my mind as well. The markets have cycles and things like that, and if you're timing the market, you have to guess when to get in and guess when to get out, and oftentimes that makes a loss. Most times it makes a loss. So I think it's important that he's concerned about it, because you should be. But I would agree that it might make sense to sit down with someone, take a look at everything to determine what your needs and goals are, and to see if there's a more efficient way, and maybe turn it over to a professional to do it rather than just someone doing it at the computer in the afternoon.
You raise a great point, though, in having the conversation with her spouse, just if in fact she's not quite sure what's going on and all these things that he's afraid of neglecting, just having the two of them sit down and start there and just say, explain to me what all these accounts are, and maybe he'll be open to that.
We sit down a lot of times with people. I would say a lot of times with people that the husband really does truly care for his wife. Boy, isn't that nice? Right. But the wife maybe doesn't have the same knowledge, and the husband just wants his wife to have the security that if something should happen to them, they have a trusted professional that she can come to help her at a point in time where, and maybe she doesn't want to be significantly involved now. Right. That's okay. But they have a trusted professional that she could come to if something would happen to him. So we deal with that quite often as well.
Yeah.
I feel like we just helped that couple.
Yeah.
With more than just their finances.
I told you we have to decide how do we wear in, the counselor or the investment planner.
I know you're not a therapist, you're just a financial planner. I get it, but I do get the sense that you probably have turned into both.
Yeah.
Gina in Scottsdale, let's see if she can follow that up. Right. I'm a single woman in my late 50s. I feel very good about what I've saved for retirement, and I'm in good health. I don't have any children, but I do have 2 nieces, and I'd like to leave them with some of our family's jewelry and a little bit of money. So what is the simplest way that I can help set this up? First of all, your nieces should be thanking you, Aunt
Right.
Dana. That's nice that she's even thinking in those
Yeah,
terms.
yeah.
What can she do to start?
So we have the best lady that works for us. Her name is Cindy, and she will sit down with Gina or people like Gina, our clients, and help them put together a trust. So I think a big question is, what is the difference, Tara, between a will and a trust? A trust is about distributions. It won't go through probate, and it cannot be contested. A will kind of does the same things, but it can go through probate and it can be contested. So we are big advocates for a trust. The best way for Gina to make sure her desires and her wishes are taken care of the way she wants them is to do a trust. In there, she can tell her nieces what type of jewelry she wants them to have, what kind of money, and it is easy to set up. And we have the best in town to help her with that.
Well, and how often have you dealt with clients who didn't have that, and now they have no idea what mom or dad wanted us to do with this, X, Y, or Z?
Well, even, I mean, think about those. So that's important. But how about those health decisions?
Right.
You find yourself not being able to make those medical decisions, and you're sick, and you've got other people, they're fighting over who wants this, who wants that, and it wasn't what you wanted. So important.
I'll say this. Back when I worked in law enforcement, my mom and dad were Midwesterners, you know, just the salt of the earth kind of people. Great people, great parents. My dad had some health challenges. And so this is long before we got into the business, but we got my mom and dad a trust with the assets that they had, and they weren't significant, but still, we got them a trust to ensure that what happened with their things after they were gone was distributed the way that they wanted it. And I will tell you, Tara, 2 months after we got the trust, my dad passed away.
Oh, wow.
So I'm just going to say it's very important, and it's easy to put off because it's not really that fun to go through the process, but it is so important.
Well, and what a way to honor your parents that
Yeah.
way as well, because you're honoring their wishes. Thank you both so much again. If you would like to learn ways to help generate lifetime income, potentially reduce your tax bill, and maintain your lifestyle in retirement, then reach out now. Steve, Stephanie, and the team are ready to help start building a retirement plan designed to help you flourish in retirement. For Steve and Stephanie and the team at Fullerton Financial Planning, I'm Tara Hitchcock, and we look forward to seeing you the next time on the Fullerton Financial Show.
Talk it out.
The preceding program was sponsored by Fullerton Financial Planning.